welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. I'm Finlos, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. And this show centers on a simple premise that physical movement is beneficial for both the mind and the body, and being in motion can help us work through the challenges we face each day. I want this to be a space where we can put in the work together, the physical work and the mental work. We'll explore big ideas and tough questions, and hopefully by the end, we'll feel a little stronger and a little clearer. And today we're diving into something I've been thinking about quite a bit, and this is the concept of social norms. And when those social norms start to break down, where do we put the feeling of anger that comes along with that breakdown? It's a complex problem, but I believe that by talking about it honestly and openly, we can start to find our rhythm and make sense of the world around us. And so what's been on my mind has been this question of norms. What are they? Why are they valuable? And what happens when they go away? And I experience a sense of resistance to there being any sort of idea of something as standard or normal that should be universally applied. But I think that there is some value to having a shared sense of expectations. And so at their core, norms are the unwritten rules of behavior that govern our interactions. They're not laws, but they're just as powerful. If you think about a very common example, like waiting your turn in line at the grocery store, there's no written law or rule that says you have to wait in line, but we all do it. We've learned through example, and we've seen the collective benefit that it keeps things efficient and it helps make things feel fair, because if everyone just pushed and shoved, the system would collapse. And so social and political norms serve a similar purpose, but on a much larger scale. They create a foundation of trust and predictability. In politics, we have norms like conceding an election gracefully or not using the justice system to target your political opponents. And these norms allow our institutions to function. They are the scaffolding of our democracy. But norms aren't static. Like all things, they change over time, and sometimes they can become harmful. The norm of racial segregation in the American South, for example, was a deeply entrenched social and political norm for a century after the Civil War. It was a norm that served one group at the expense of another. And this is where the tension between individual and collective value comes in. The collective value of a society should not come at the expense of an individual's dignity or rights. And this is also where we see the importance of conflict and protest. While we often think of protest as a sign that the system is broken, it can also be a vital way to maintain or reestablish norms. The civil rights movement, for instance, focused on challenging the norms of segregation and demanding that the ideals of the Constitution apply to all Americans. The conflict that arises from protest is a way for society to check itself and reevaluate what it holds to be true and fair. When norms change, especially through social movements like the civil rights era, the dominant group that benefited from the old norms often seeks to return to the prior status quo. They view the loss of their power or privilege as an attack, and they will try to use institutional and political power to reverse the progress that has been made. We're seeing this right now with attempts to roll back voting rights, limit protest, and rewrite history curricula. The fight for new, more inclusive norms is never truly finished. It's a constant struggle against those who want to go back to a time when they were in complete control. For instance, between 2020 and 2023, 29 states passed 94 restrictive voting laws, making it harder for people to vote. This is a clear attempt to roll back norms of democratic access. But let's be more specific. Think about the norms of social media. The expectation of civil discourse, the use of a person's real name, and the challenge of discerning truth from misinformation have all eroded. Platforms, algorithms often reward the most extreme and divisive content, accelerating the breakdown of shared social norms. The rise of doxing and online harassment, where personal information is shared to incite a mob, is a complete violation of the unspoken contract of privacy and safety. And institutions are the formal structures that give norms a physical presence. Governments, schools, banks, and so on. They're supposed to be the enduring containers for our collective values, but institutions can become ossified. They can become hard. They can resist change and continue to enforce old norms long after they have outlived their usefulness. This is where the tension between institutional versus collectivist culture can arise. Institutional culture is the way things have always been done, while collectivist culture is the way the people within that institution are behaving. Ideally, they are in sync, but when they diverge, you have a problem. We can see this in the decline of trust. For example, a 2023 Gallup poll found that only 26% of Americans have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in newspapers, and 20% in television news. This shows that the public believes these institutions are no longer upholding the norms of truth and impartiality. And it's not just political norms. Consider the economic norms we've lost. The expectation that a company provides stable, long-term employment has largely been replaced by the gig economy, where precarious work and a lack of benefits are the norm. This shift affects millions and can be a profound source of the anger with nowhere to go that we all feel. A 2024 survey from the American Psychological Association found that a majority of Americans feel stressed about the future of the nation and the political climate. These are not just abstract ideas. They have a real quantifiable impact on our mental health. And this is really at the heart of what's been on my mind. The relationship of all of this to direct democracy versus representational democracy. In a direct democracy, every individual gets a say on every issue. The institution of representation is a tool for reinforcing power. It's supposed to give a voice to everyone, but historically it has been used to solidify the power of those who already have it and to weaken those who are already weak. If we think about the history of voting rights in the United States, from the Three-Fifths Compromise to the Jim Crow era, the very institution of representation was used to disenfranchise huge swaths of the population. So, an institution for efficiency and security becomes one of control. The historical context for all of these ideas are so important. In ancient Rome, the idea of mos memoriam, or the way of the ancestors, was a core part of their culture. It was the unwritten code of conduct that guided their politics and society. But as Rome grew and changed, those norms became strained and eventually collapsed, contributing to the fall of the Republic and the rise of the empire. We see echoes of this today. The norms of civility, of honest debate, of conceding an election, they feel like they are collapsing. A 2024 Pew Research Center study showed that a vast majority of Republicans and Democrats view the opposing party unfavorably, with a significant share viewing the other side as a threat to the nation's well-being. Another powerful example comes from ancient China, with the concept of the mandate of heaven. This was the philosophical idea that a ruler's legitimacy came from divine approval, but that this approval was contingent on their just and benevolent rule. When a dynasty became corrupt, ineffective, or cruel, it was seen as having lost the mandate of heaven. The old norms of loyalty to the emperor would then collapse, and a new dynasty would rise up to replace it. This wasn't a static system. It was a cyclical process where the collapse of norms was a necessary part of societal renewal. The People's Rebellion was not a betrayal of the system, but a reaffirmation of it. In contrast to these top-down centralized systems, many indigenous cultures view governance and norms through a more decentralized lens. For example, the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois Confederacy operates under the Great Law of Peace. This oral constitution wasn't composed by a single ruler, but was a consensus-based agreement among nations to end conflict and govern collectively. Their norms emphasize balance, collective responsibility, and consensus decision-making, where everyone's voice is heard. The integrity of the system is not tied to a single powerful leader, but to the health of the entire community and the maintenance of peaceful relationships. This is a crucial distinction in many Western and European contexts. The legitimacy of norms is often tied to the power of the institutions that enforce them. For the Haudenosaunee, legitimacy comes from the collective agreement and ongoing practice of the norms themselves. We are grappling with the same questions the Romans and ancient Chinese did, but perhaps it's these indigenous examples that offer the most profound alternative. What happens when the unspoken contract that holds us together is broken? And is there a place for the individual, the collective, and the institution to coexist in a way that serves all three? When we look at the historical context, the similarities are striking. In the mid-19th century, the United States was grappling with the collapse of norms around slavery, which led to the Civil War. In the early 20th century, the norms of international diplomacy collapsed, leading to the two world wars. What's happening now in the United States, with the norms of democratic transition and political civility being openly challenged, feels like a similar moment in our history. The stakes are incredibly high, and it makes me wonder, how does one maintain the fight against overwhelming odds when those in power no longer follow institutional, political, societal, collective, or individual norms, like what's happening now in the United States? And that gets me thinking. This is the question that's been really lending itself to cycles of feeling helpless. How do we maintain the fight against overwhelming odds when the rules of the game have been discarded by the very people who are supposed to be upholding them? And this is a question that people have grappled with throughout history. One of the things that becomes essential is a deep commitment to your own personal values. When the external guideposts are gone, the internal compass becomes one's only reliable tool. And this isn't a new idea. It's a central tenet of Stoicism, an ancient Greek philosophy that teaches that we can't control external events, but we can control our reactions to them. The Stoics would say that your goal is not to win the political battle, but to act with virtue, to do what is right, regardless of the outcome. So it's not about being passive or giving up. It's about focusing on what we can control. And we can control our own actions. We can control our integrity. And we can control our own commitment to the things that we value. It's the difference between being outcome-oriented and process-oriented. In an unstable world, focusing on the process, the day-to-day work of resistance, the small acts of defiance, the commitment to telling the truth, is what keeps us sane and allows us to keep going. We can try to embed these concepts of Stoicism into our daily life in practical ways. And for me, again, this comes down to remembering to consider what are the things that I can control. I can't control what politicians do, but I can control how I spend my time and what I choose to read. I can't control the overall mood of the country, but I can control my kindness to the person in front of me at the grocery store. And this simple practice of identifying what is and not within my power is a powerful tool against helplessness. And a companion idea to this is the concept of emergent strategy, particularly the principle that small is all. And this idea, developed by author and activist Adrienne Marie Brown, suggests that large-scale change isn't about grand sweeping actions. Instead, it's about the consistent daily practice of small intentional acts. The way we treat our neighbors, the conversations we have with our families, the way we engage in our local communities. These small acts are not insignificant. They are the building blocks of a new, more just society. They are the seeds of the world we want to live in. This is a powerful antidote to feeling overwhelmed. Instead of feeling like we have to single-handedly solve a massive systemic problem, we can focus on the small, manageable things we can do right now, knowing that they are a part of a larger, unfolding change. And key to this is the power of the collective. When individual norms break down, the collective can become a powerful source of strength. And we can think about this when we consider labor unions. Individual workers are powerless against a corporation, but when they band together, they have leverage. The same is true in the political sphere. When institutional norms break down, a collective of citizens, activists, and organizers can create their own norms and their own systems of support. The history of social movements is filled with examples of this. When the norms of polite society told Rosa Parks to sit in the back of the bus, she refused, and the collective of the Montgomery bus boycott organized their own transportation, their own systems of support. They created their own reality, their own norms, in the face of an unjust institutional system. This is the heart of collectivism. It's the power of we when they have broken the rules. So what do? You find your collective. You lean on your friends and your colleagues. You talk to your community and you create your own counter norms. You speak the truth in your spaces, even if it's not the official state-sanctioned version of the truth. You find strength in the fact that you are not alone. But how do you find this community or collective when it feels like the world is falling apart? And I guess the first step is to seek out shared values, not just shared interests. We look for people who are passionate about the same things that we are, whether it's environmental issues or social justice or supporting small businesses. You can join local community groups, attend public discussions, or volunteer for a cause you believe in. The power of a collective begins with a simple conversation, a shared frustration, and a desire to work together for a common good. It starts with finding one other person who feels the same way you do and growing from there. We can also look to other cultures for examples of this kind of resistance. In Puerto Rico, the 2019 summer protests known as Verano Boricua saw hundreds of thousands of people from all walks of life come together to demand the resignation of then-Governor Ricardo Rosselló. It was an unprecedented collective act of defiance against a corrupt political establishment. People used social media and popular culture to organize and share information, creating a decentralized and highly effective movement that bypassed traditional political institutions. In this case, the collective norms, demanding accountability and transparency, overrode the institutional norms of power. Similarly, in South Korea, the 2016 and 2017 candlelight protests were a powerful example of peaceful collective action against political corruption. Millions of citizens took to the streets every Saturday for months, armed with nothing but candles. The protests were so well organized and massive that they led to the impeachment and removal of President Park Geun-hye. This was a testament to the power of a collective to enforce new norms of accountability, even when faced with institutional resistance. And of course, this brings us to the core of the problem. When the fight feels overwhelming, when the norms you've relied on are gone, and when you're trying to find your footing in a world that feels like it's tilting on its axis, where does all that frustration and anger go? What do we do with it? And this leads us to our final segment. And today, depression feels like anger with nowhere to go. I'm sure we've all had the feeling furious, but there's no person or thing you can point to and say, you did this. The problem is systemic, it's institutional, and it's so diffuse that you can't get your hands around it. It's not just one bad guy. It's millions of tiny cuts. The anger builds up, but there's no outlet, no place to put it. This kind of anger in a depressive state can be toxic. It turns inward and it becomes corrosive, and it eats away at us from the inside. When I'm in a depressive state, my thoughts are already chaotic. And if I add this kind of impotent rage to the mix, it only makes me feel more out of control of my feelings. And this is the opposite of the anger that fuels protests. The anger that fuels a movement is directed, focused, and has a goal. It's the anger that says, this is wrong, and we must change it. The anger I'm talking about is the one that says, this is wrong, but there's nothing I can do. The result is a profound sense of helplessness. The feeling that my efforts don't matter, that my voice doesn't count. Because when the norms are gone, and when the very rules of the game have been discarded, it can feel like I'm trying to play a game with someone who is making random moves. It's not just frustrating, it's a profound violation of fairness and of a sense of order. And for me, this feeling of anger with nowhere to go can be a core part of my depressive experience. It can manifest as irritability, as a short temper, or as a simmering resentment. But underneath it all is a profound sadness and a feeling of being untethered. When the social contract is broken, when the unspoken rules are no longer in effect, it makes us feel alone. So, for an image, today depression feels like a closed fist. It's the rage of a person who is trying to do the right thing in a world that no longer seems to want to reward it. It's the exhaustion of fighting a battle where the rules are constantly changing, and it's the profound sadness of feeling like my own integrity and efforts are not enough to change anything. If we look at all these ideas, the value of norms, the struggle against odds, and the feeling of anger with no place to go, and what ties them together is this central concept of having a shared reality. Norms are what create that shared reality. They are our collective agreement on how we should work in shared spaces. When those norms collapse, our shared reality shatters. It's no longer clear what's true, what's fair, or what is acceptable. And this is precisely the goal of those who seek to use power without limits. By breaking down norms, they dismantle the very foundation of the shared reality, making it impossible for people to come together and fight back. If we can't agree on what's real, we can't agree on what's wrong. The fight for norms, then, is not just a political fight. It's a fight for our collective sanity. It is the fight to establish and maintain a shared reality based on truth and fairness. The fight against overwhelming odds is the refusal to accept that our shared reality is gone. And the feeling of anger with no place to go is the emotional toll of that very fight. The exhaustion and frustration of trying to build a bridge between the world as it is and the world as it should be, when the other side seems to be actively trying to dismantle the bridge. I want to add a few final thoughts. This struggle can feel immense, but you have more power than you think. You can build a shared reality in your own life. Challenge yourself to fact-check information before you share it. This simple act reinforces the norm of truth. Seek out people with different viewpoints and engage in intentional conversations. The goal isn't to win an argument, but to understand. And most importantly, get involved at the local level. Volunteer for a local cause you believe in, or simply get to know your local neighbors. These small acts of engagement are the building blocks of a stronger collective. If any of this resonates with you, I want you to know you're not alone. It's a shared experience to feel overwhelmed by the information noise, to feel the weight of it all. If you're feeling a deep sense of exhaustion, please consider reaching out to somebody you trust, a friend, a family member, or a professional. I offer a sincere thank you for sharing your time with me today. It's good to know that we're in this together. If you have comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, let me know. You can reach out to me on social media or send a message to finlos@finloslives.com. Please consider sharing this content if you think it has any value, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you get notified about new episodes. Let's do the work and keep moving forward. I look forward to our next conversation.